My mom sedated me with animal tranquilizers for years to keep me disabled, so I escaped and slammed the door on her forever. A year later, my mom sent a tearful letter claiming she did it out of love and asking to see me again. Going to a ghetto school was like walking onto a battlefield of different diseases. You see, parents didn't want to have to pay to feed their kids lunch, so staying at home sick from school was just not a thing. And one day when a girl coughed on me, I chose not to wash my hands. This one decision ended up ruining the rest of my life. In just a week, I had gone from having a mild sore throat to barely being able to stand without losing my breath. And my parents, the same people who once told me that they weren't going to buy me dinner because I could just eat a lot during the free lunch at school, poured all their savings into hospital bills. It was a race against time to keep me alive. It got so bad that we were forced to ask neighbors for money, and suddenly everyone was helping out, not just with donations, but hospital visits and gifts too. My bedside was filled with flowers, chocolates, all the childhood toys I never had. I'm embarrassed to say that some small part of me almost didn't want to get better from pneumonia. Unfortunately, my wish came true, because instead of recovering properly, I felt super dizzy, lethargic, and could barely stand. And after months in the hospital, I was officially diagnosed with a disability that included not being able to walk for the rest of my life. I tried to be optimistic, to tell myself all I had to do was give myself some time to adjust. My plan for positivity ended up being crushed to the ground, because a few days after going back home, I woke up to the sound of my parents throwing everything I owned into boxes and bin bags. "We're moving!" they exclaimed, as if it wasn't completely out of the blue. What? We don't want to hear it, Zoe. We deserve a fresh start after all the shat you put us through. Their sudden tone change was so abrupt, it completely caught me off guard. I felt too scared to say anything else, so I just nodded my head. In just a few days, I found myself sitting in a wheelchair in the back of my parents' van, driving all the way from our home in LA to Salt Lake City. I didn't even know how I was going to attend school or what my life would look like as a disabled. Turns out my parents had already made those decisions for me. With all the donations for my illness, they were able to send me to a private high school. In my first month, everyone was gushing over me in the wheelchair, calling me brave and inspiration, because apparently my parents had informed the entire school of what had happened. At first, the attention was cool, sort of made me feel like a badass. But after the first 3 days, I got sick of telling the story of what had happened. I just wanted to go back to being invisible, a recluse. "Mom, things are really hard right now." I tried to confide in her later that day with tears in my eyes. "Hard? You don't even know what hard is. Me and your father have given up everything for you." She was screaming so hard I thought her vein in her forehead was going to explode. So I wheeled myself to my bedroom and cried my eyes out. Part of me just wanted everything to go away, but mostly I just felt guilty. So from there, I hid everything behind fake smiles and pretend laughter, as if my entire life hadn't been flipped upside down. When my mom gave me my medication in the morning, I'd tell her how grateful I was for everything that had happened, how I wouldn't have it any other way. Whenever they posted me on Facebook, I would insist on changing into a yellow t-shirt so I'd look brighter. I just wanted to be the daughter they'd always wanted instead of a burden. And for a while, it worked. I watched as my dad hugged my mom a little tighter. My mom kissed my dad a little longer. It was like all my happiness had been traded in for theirs. So one morning when my parents weren't home and the medication accidentally fell out of my pocket and into the toilet bowl, the last thing I wanted to do was tell them. That's how I spent my morning wheeling myself to the pharmacy to get a medication refill, except my sob story didn't work on her. She just looked extremely confused. "Honey, this medication is acepromazine, a tranquilizer used to sedate animals, mostly dogs or horses. It would never be prescribed to treat any kind of human disability." I felt sick to my stomach. Okay, but can you please just refill them?" I asked, hoping that she didn't know what she was talking about. Over the next few days, I pretended to take the medication, but as soon as my mom walked out, I'd spit it out into my pillowcase. I don't know what I was looking for, but I just knew I had this nagging feeling that wasn't going away. And in just 2 weeks, I was able to stand from my wheelchair for the first time since I was hospitalized all those years ago. My pneumonia was never the reason I couldn't walk. It was always my parents. They'd been drugging me for years. But why? The donations, the attention, the sympathy, it all made horrible sense. I'm still figuring out what to do next. I'm practicing walking in secret when they're not home. I've been researching what acepromazine does to humans long term. I'm terrified of what they'll do if they find out I know, but I can't live like this anymore. I've been practicing walking every day for the past week when my parents aren't home. It's not easy after being in a wheelchair for so long. My muscles are weak and shaky, like a newborn deer trying to stand for the first time. I've been using the furniture to support myself, shuffling from the couch to the kitchen counter, then to the dining table. Each day I can go a little farther without needing to rest. Yesterday I managed to walk all the way from my bedroom to the living room without holding on to anything. It was only about 15 steps, but it felt like climbing Mount Everest. My legs were trembling the whole time and I was drenched in sweat by the end of it, but I did it. I actually did it. The hardest part is pretending nothing has changed. When my parents are home, I have to act like I'm still completely dependent on the wheelchair. I have to remember to slump in a certain way, to let my feet drag when they help me transfer to the couch or bed. I have to remember to look tired and weak after the smallest exertion. It's exhausting, honestly. The acting is more tiring than the actual walking practice. I've been researching acepromazine online using my school laptop. Had to delete my search history every time, just in case. Turns out this stuff can cause all kinds of problems in humans. Dizziness, weakness, low blood pressure, even respiratory depression. The effects are temporary though. They wear off as the substance leaves your system, which explains why I'm improving now that I've stopped taking it. No wonder I could barely function. They've been essentially poisoning me for years. The biggest challenge has been dealing with the pills. My mom watches me take them every morning and evening, standing there until I swallow. I've gotten pretty good at hiding them under my tongue and spitting them out later, but I know she's going to notice eventually that I'm not going through the medication as quickly as before. So I came up with a plan. I took a bus to a health food store about 2 miles from our house, told my parents I was studying at the library with a classmate. The bus driver had to help me with the wheelchair ramp, which was humiliating, but necessary for keeping up appearances. At the store, I bought some vitamin B tablets that looked similar in size and color to the acepromazine. Not identical, but close enough that if you weren't really looking, you might not notice the difference. When I got home, I carefully replaced about half the pills in my prescription bottle with the vitamins. That way, if they count them, the numbers will still go down at the right rate. It's not perfect, but it buys me some time. Last night, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. I was supposed to be asleep, but I'd gotten up to practice walking a bit in my room. My parents were in the kitchen, talking in low voices. I crept to my door and listened. The fundraiser next month could be huge, my dad was saying. The church group already promised to match donations up to $5,000. My mom sounded excited. And with the video we're making about her journey, we could easily double what we made last year. We just need to make sure she looks, sympathetic enough, my dad replied. People respond better when they can see the struggle. Don't worry, my mom said. I'll make sure she takes her medication. She's been a little more alert lately. I might need to adjust the dosage. I had to clamp my hand over my mouth to keep from gasping. They were planning to parade me around like some kind of circus attraction again. And my mom had noticed I was more alert, which meant she was thinking about increasing the substances. I felt sick to my stomach. I crawled back to bed, my mind racing. I needed help, but who could I trust? Most of my old friends from LA were long gone. The kids at my new school only knew the version of me my parents had created. The teachers all thought my parents were saints for taking such good care of their disabled daughter. Then I remembered my Aunt Sharon, my mom's sister. She lived in Denver, about an 8-hour drive away. We weren't super close, but she'd always been kind to me. She sent birthday cards with actual cash in them, not just the empty, hope you have a great day kind. And she'd visited me in the hospital a few times when I was sick, even though it was a long drive from Denver to LA. We'd had a few meaningful conversations during those visits, and she'd always treated me like a real person, not just a sick kid. The next day, I waited until both my parents left for work. My dad had recently gotten a job at an insurance company, and my mom was working part-time at a boutique downtown. As soon as they were gone, I got out of my wheelchair and practiced walking around the house some more. Then I found my mom's address book and looked up Aunt Sharon's number. My hands were shaking as I dialed. What if she didn't believe me? What if she called my parents? What if, hello? Her voice sounded exactly the same. Aunt Sharon? It's Zoe. Zoe, what a surprise. How are you, sweetie? I took a deep breath. Not good. I need help. I can't explain everything over the phone, but my parents have been drugging me, making me think I can't walk when I can. They've been using me to get money from people. There was a long silence. I thought maybe she'd hung up. Aunt Sharon? I'm here, she said quietly. I always wondered. Some things just didn't add up. Your sudden disability after the pneumonia, the constant fundraisers, the way they moved you away from everyone who knew you before. Tears sprang to my eyes. She believed me. Someone actually believed me. What can I do? She asked. We talked for almost an hour. She wanted to call the police right away, but I convinced her that would be dangerous. My parents would just deny everything, and I had no proof yet. We needed evidence. She promised to help me figure out a plan and to come visit as soon as she could without raising suspicion. After I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't alone anymore, but my relief was short-lived. That afternoon, my mom came home early and found footprints on the bathroom floor. Footprints I'd accidentally left after stepping out of the shower with wet feet. I'd been so careful up until then, always wiping away any evidence of my walking. What are these? She demanded, pointing at the floor. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? These footprints, Zoe. Explain them. My mind raced. Oh, probably from when I was trying to reach something from the sink this morning. I had to kind of stand up a bit from my chair. My feet must have touched the floor. She stared at me for what felt like forever. Her eyes narrowed. You know you're not supposed to try standing without help. You could fall and hurt yourself. I know. I'm sorry. It was stupid. Yes, it was. She crossed her arms. Have you been taking your medication properly? Of course. I lied. Every day. Just like you give it to me. She studied my face. You seem different lately. More energetic. I've been sleeping better, I said quickly. And the physical therapy at school has been helping with my upper body strength. She didn't look convinced, but she let it go. For now. That night, she watched me even more closely as I took my med. I could feel her eyes boring into me as I put it in my mouth, took a sip of water, and pretended to swallow. I even added a little grimace, like it was hard to get down. Open, she said suddenly. What? Open your mouth. Let me see. My heart pounded. Thankfully, I'd already moved the med under my tongue. I opened my mouth wide, lifting my tongue to show her there was nothing there. She seemed satisfied and left the room. As soon as she was gone, I spit the med into a tissue and flushed it down the toilet. That was too close. She was getting suspicious. The next day, things got even worse. When I came home from school, there were new locks on the medicine cabinet, and a few days after that, I noticed a small camera had been installed in the living room, pointed directly at the main areas where I spent most of my time. They were watching me. I texted Aunt Sharon about the new developments using a burner phone she'd mailed to me in a care package. She'd cleverly hidden it inside a stuffed animal with a secret compartment. My parents had opened the package when it arrived, but hadn't thought to check inside the toy. They're getting paranoid, I texted her. Installing cameras now. This is getting dangerous, she replied. We need to move faster. We agreed that she would visit in 2 weeks, claiming she was in town for a work conference. In the meantime, I needed to gather evidence. I started taking pictures of my medication bottle with the label clearly showing it was acepromazine. I found receipts for the substance in my dad's desk drawer and photographed those too. I even recorded a video of myself walking around my room when my parents weren't home, showing the date on my phone first to prove when it was taken. But my parents were getting more controlling by the day. My mom started coming into the bathroom with me, claiming she was worried about me falling. My dad installed more cameras, including one in the hallway outside my bedroom. They were closing in, making it harder for me to practice walking or do anything without supervision. Then came the night that changed everything. I was in my room pretending to do homework while actually texting with Aunt Sharon when I heard my parents arguing downstairs. I couldn't make out the words at first, but their voices kept getting louder. She knows something, my mom shouted, loud enough for me to hear clearly. I can tell. Keep your voice down, my dad hissed. We need to increase her dosage, my mom continued, slightly quieter now. She's been acting different, more alert. What if she figures it out? If we give her any more, it could be dangerous, my dad replied. We need her functional for the fundraiser next month. We need her compliant, my mom snapped back. Everything we've built could come crashing down. Their voices dropped again, and I couldn't hear the rest, but I'd heard enough. They were planning to substance me even more heavily. I needed to act fast. The next morning, my mom brought me a glass of orange juice with my meds. The juice looked cloudier than usual. I pretended to drink it, but managed to pour most of it into a potted plant when she turned to answer her phone. As soon as she left for work, I dumped the rest down the sink. My suspicions were confirmed. They were trying to increase my dosage by crushing the pills into my drinks. That afternoon, Aunt Sharon texted me with a plan. She was coming this weekend, not in 2 weeks as we'd originally discussed. She'd booked a hotel room near our house and rented a car. She was going to help me escape, but my parents must have sensed something was up. That evening, they sat me down for a family meeting. My dad paced back and forth while my mom sat across from me, her face a mask of concern. Zoe, we're worried about you, she began. You've been distant lately, secretive. I don't know what you mean, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We think you might be skipping your medication, my dad said bluntly, which would explain why you've been acting so, different. I take my pills every day, I insisted. You watch me take them. My mom leaned forward. Then how do you explain this? She held up her phone, showing a video from their security camera. It showed me walking, actually walking, from my bedroom to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I'd been careful to avoid the cameras during the day, but in my sleepy state that night, I'd completely forgotten about the hallway camera. My blood ran cold. I can explain, I stammered. We're very disappointed, Zoe, my dad said, his voice hard. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me, I couldn't help myself. You've been drugging me, making me think I couldn't walk. They exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. You're confused, sweetie, my mom said in a sickly, sweet voice. The medication helps manage your condition. Without it, you might think you can walk normally, but you'll just hurt yourself. That's not true, I was shouting now. It's animal tranquilizer. It's not meant for humans. My dad's face darkened. This is exactly why you need your medication. You're becoming paranoid, delusional. What happened next is still a blur. I remember trying to stand up from my wheelchair to prove I could walk. My dad pushed me back down, hard. My mom went to get my emergency medication, a higher dose, I'm sure. I fought, screaming that I wouldn't take it. In the struggle, I fell out of my wheelchair, chair, hitting my head on the coffee table. I woke up in my bed, groggy and disoriented. My head throbbed where I'd hit it. When I tried to get up, I realized with horror that they'd restrained me. Actual restraints on my wrists and ankles, tying me to the bed. My bedroom door was locked from the outside. They kept me like that for 3 days. My mom would come in to feed me, help me use a bedpan, the ultimate humiliation, and give me my medication, which she made sure I swallowed by checking under my tongue and inside my cheeks afterward. My dad installed a new lock on my bedroom window and removed anything I could potentially use to escape or call for help. On the 3rd day, my mom came in looking worried. "Your Aunt Sharon called," she said casually, watching my face for a reaction. "Says she's in town for a conference and wants to visit." Isn't that nice? I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my heart was racing. "Yeah, that's cool. I told her you weren't feeling well, that you had a bad fall and needed to rest." My mom's eyes were cold despite her smile. She seemed very disappointed. I said nothing, but inside I was panicking. Aunt Sharon was my only hope, and now my parents were keeping her away. That night, after my mom gave me my medication, I pretended to fall into a deep sleep. I managed to hide the med under my tongue again. I was getting better at it despite their checks. As soon as she left, I worked on loosening the restraints. They'd gotten slightly careless, not checking them as thoroughly since I'd been cooperative the last day or so. It took hours, but I finally freed one hand. With that, I was able to untie the rest. Moving silently, I crept to my bedroom door. Locked, of course. But in their arrogance, they hadn't considered that the lock was the simple kind with a hole in the center of the knob. I took a straightened paperclip I'd hidden in my pillowcase and picked the lock, a skill I'd learned from YouTube videos on my school laptop. The house was dark and quiet. It was after midnight and my parents were asleep. I tiptoed to their bedroom and carefully, silently, opened the door a crack. They were both in bed, my dad snoring softly. On their nightstand was my bottle of Hills. I crept in and took it, along with my dad's phone. Then I went to his office and found the folder labeled Zoe's Medical, where they kept all the records of my fake condition. I took pictures of everything with his phone, then sent them all to Aunt Sharon's number with a text. "Help. Escaped but need pickup." They drugged me and restrained me. Just as I hit send, the lights flipped on. My mom stood in the doorway, her face a mask of fury. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed. I backed away, clutching the phone and med bottle. "Exposing you," I said, my voice shaking but determined. "It's over, Mom. I know what you've been doing, and now other people do too." She lunged for me, but years of being in a wheelchair had made my arms strong. I pushed past her and ran down the hallway toward the front door. My legs were wobbly, but they worked. Behind me, I heard her screaming for my dad. I made it outside just as headlights turned onto our street. Aunt Sharon's rental car pulled up and she jumped out, her face pale with worry. "Zoe!" Oh my God. I ran to her, falling into her arms as my parents burst out the front door. "She's having an episode!" My mom shouted for the neighbors to hear. "She needs her medication." But Aunt Sharon stood her ground. "I've called the police," she said loudly. "They're on their way, and I have evidence of what you've been doing to her." My dad's face went white when he realized I was holding his phone. He must have seen the sent messages. The next hour was chaos. Police cars, questions, my parents trying to convince everyone I was mentally unstable, but the evidence was overwhelming. The animal tranquilizers prescribed to a pet they didn't have, the restraints on my bed, the videos I'd taken of myself walking, the financial records showing all the donations they'd collected for my condition. They were arrested that night. I went home with Aunt Sharon to her hotel, both of us too wired to sleep. We sat up talking until dawn, trying to process everything that had happened. "I always thought something was off," she told me, her eyes sad. "The way your mom described your condition never made medical sense to me, but I never imagined they'd go this far. Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. She sighed. "I tried, once or twice. Your mom shut me down completely, said I was jealous of the attention she was getting as the mother of a disabled child. After that, she limited my contact with you. I figured the best thing I could do was stay in your life, even if it was just birthday cards and occasional visits." I nodded, understanding. My parents had isolated me from anyone who might question their story. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Medical examinations confirmed I had no actual disability, just muscle weakness from years of disuse and the temporary effects of the tranquilizers. Physical therapy helped me regain strength quickly. The police investigation uncovered even more than we'd realized. My parents had collected over $200,000 in donations over the years, all based on lies about my condition. They were charged with child abuse, fraud, unlawful imprisonment, and several other crimes I can't even remember. The trial is still pending, but their lawyer has already approached us about a plea deal. They're facing serious prison time either way. Aunt Sharon applied for emergency guardianship, which was granted immediately. I moved to Denver with her, enrolled in a new school, and started the long process of rebuilding my life. The hardest part hasn't been the physical recovery. It's been dealing with the psychological impact of what they did to me. I have trust issues, obviously, and nightmares, lots of nightmares, but I'm walking now, every day getting stronger. Sometimes I still reach for a wheelchair that isn't there, a phantom limb of a different sort. Old habits die hard, I guess. The weirdest part about all of this is how quickly I've had to adjust to my new normal. It's been 3 months since I moved in with Aunt Sharon in Denver. Her apartment isn't huge, but it has these big windows that let in tons of light, completely different from the cave-like house my parents kept me in. She cleared out her home office to make a bedroom for me, even painted it this cool teal color I picked out. Physical therapy has been kicking my A's, not gonna lie. My therapist, Kevin, is this super enthusiastic guy who keeps pushing me to do just 5 more of whatever torture exercise he's assigned. My legs are getting stronger though. I can walk about half a mile now without needing to rest, which doesn't sound like much, but it's a huge improvement. Kevin says my progress is remarkable, considering how long I was in that wheelchair. The first few weeks at my new school were awkward as hell. Being the new girl is hard enough, but being the new girl with the crazy parents who drugged her is a whole other level. News travels fast, especially when your case makes the local Denver papers. I overheard some kids whispering about me in the hallway on my second day. One of them actually asked if I was that wheelchair girl right to my face. I just said not anymore and walked away. Probably could have come up with something wittier, but whatever. Aunt Sharon suggested I join some clubs to meet people, so I signed up for the school newspaper. Turns out I'm pretty good at writing. Maybe because I spent so many years observing everyone else while being stuck in that chair. The newspaper advisor, Ms. Patel, says I have a unique perspective. I'm working on an article about accessibility issues in public spaces. Ironic, right? Last week I had to testify at a preliminary hearing for my parents' case. That was brutal. I had to sit in this small room with just the prosecutor, a court reporter, and my parents' lawyers. Aunt Sharon waited outside. The lawyers tried to trip me up, suggesting maybe I was confused about the medication, or that perhaps my parents were just doing what they thought was best. I didn't break though. I just kept telling the truth over and over. The prosecutor, this badass lady named Christine, told me afterward that I did great. My parents are still in jail waiting for trial. They couldn't make bail because all their assets were frozen as part of the fraud investigation. I haven't seen them since that night they were arrested. Part of me wants to face them, to ask them why they did this to me. Another part never wants to see them again. My therapist, yeah, I have one of those too now, says both feelings are normal and I don't have to decide anything right now. The hardest thing to deal with has been the nightmares. I keep dreaming that I'm back in that house, tied to my bed, and my mom is coming at me with a syringe full of that tranquilizer. In the dream, I try to scream, but nothing comes out. I usually wake up drenched in sweat. Aunt Sharon got me this weighted blanket that helps a little. She never complains when I wake her up at 3 a.m., even though she has to be up early for work. Speaking of Aunt Sharon, she's been amazing through all of this. Turns out she always had suspicions about my parents, but could never prove anything. She told me she used to be close with my mom when they were younger, but they drifted apart after my mom met my dad. Apparently, he was always kind of controlling and manipulative. Sharon says my mom changed after they got together, became more secretive and obsessed with money. Still doesn't excuse what they did to me, though. The police investigation uncovered even more than we initially thought. My parents had been planning this for years, even before I got pneumonia. They had researched rare neurological disorders, joined parent support groups for children with disabilities, and even consulted with a lawyer about setting up a special needs trust, all before I supposedly became disabled. The pneumonia was just a convenient opportunity to put their plan into action. They found journals my mom kept detailing how much money they made from each fundraiser, how they spent it, and plans for future medical crises they could exploit for more donations. There were even notes about which photos of me generated the most sympathy online. It makes me sick thinking about how calculated it all was. Last month, the prosecutor offered them a plea deal. My dad took it immediately. 15 years for child abuse, fraud, and false imprisonment. My mom initially refused, insisting she was just doing what was necessary for our family. But when her lawyer showed her all the evidence they had, including those journals, she changed her tune. She ended up taking a slightly worse deal, 18 years. The judge still has to approve everything, but Christine says it's pretty much a done deal. I've been trying to rebuild my life piece by piece. Got my own phone now, with no parental tracking apps or monitoring software. Aunt Sharon helped me open my own bank account too. The court froze most of my parents' assets, but there was some money in an account they had set up in my name for college. The judge ruled that I get to keep that at least. It's not a ton, but it's something. Social media has been weird. Some random people from my old school in Salt Lake City found me online and sent messages saying they always thought something seemed off about my situation. Easy to say that now, I guess. A few reporters tried to contact me for interviews, but Aunt Sharon shut that down fast. She's super protective, but in a good way, not in a controlling way like my parents. The physical recovery has been the easiest part, honestly. My body bounced back pretty quickly once I stopped taking those tranquilizers. The doctor said I was lucky there wasn't any permanent damage to my organs. Apparently, long-term use of ace-promazine in humans can cause liver problems and other serious issues. I had some elevated liver enzymes at first, but they've normalized now. The psychological stuff is trickier. I still have moments where I reach for a wheelchair that isn't there. Sometimes I catch myself asking for permission to do basic things like use the bathroom or get a snack from the kitchen. Old habits die hard, I guess. My therapist, Catherine, says that's normal after what I've been through. She calls it institutional behavior, like I was living in a prison for years, which I basically was. The weirdest thing happened last week. I got a letter from my mom. Aunt Sharon almost didn't give it to me, but Catherine said it might be good for me to read it, as long as I felt ready. In the letter, my mom tried to explain herself, saying they were desperate after my hospital bills from the pneumonia and saw an opportunity to give me a better life. She claimed they always planned to stop the medication eventually, once they had saved enough money. She said she loved me and hoped I could forgive her someday. I read it once, then tore it up and threw it away. Maybe someday I'll want to hear her excuses, but not now. Right now, I'm focused on moving forward. Yesterday, I went for a run, an actual run, just around the block, and I was wheezing like an asthmatic pug by the end of it, but still. Kevin was super proud when I told him at PT. He's adjusted my exercise regimen to include more cardio now. My goal is to run a 5K by the end of the year. Seems doable. I've made a few friends at school. This girl, Lauren from the newspaper, invited me to sit with her group at lunch. They're all journalism nerds who want to change the world through the power of the written word. It's a little cheesy, but I kind of love it. They don't treat me like I'm fragile or damaged, which is refreshing. Aunt Sharon and I have started a Friday night tradition of trying a new restaurant every week. Denver has way better food options than Salt Lake City did, or at least the parts of it I was allowed to see. Last week we had Ethiopian food for the first time. I had no idea what I was doing with that spongy bread thing, but it was delicious. The court case is still ongoing, but my part in it is mostly done. There will be a sentencing hearing eventually where I can make a victim impact statement if I want to. Catherine is helping me write it, though I'm not sure if I'll actually deliver it in person. The thought of facing my parents in court makes my stomach twist into knots. Some days are harder than others. I still get angry, like punch a wall angry, when I think about all the years they stole from me, all the normal teenage experiences I missed, first dates, school dances, just hanging out with friends without being the inspirational wheelchair girl. I'm trying to catch up on all that now, but it's not the same. Last night I had a dream that wasn't a nightmare for once. I was running through a field, just running because I could. The sun was warm on my face and the grass was soft under my feet. I woke up smiling instead of screaming, which felt like progress. I'm starting to think about the future now. College, maybe. I've been researching journalism programs. Turns out I really do love writing. Aunt Sharon says I can stay with her as long as I want, even after I turn 18 next year. It's nice having options, making my own choices. Sometimes I catch myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see my parents watching me, ready to force me back into that wheelchair. Catherine says those feelings will fade with time. I hope she's right. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time, learning to trust people again, learning to trust myself, walking on my own 2 feet, literally and figuratively. It's not easy, but nothing worth doing ever is, right? Yesterday I walked 2 miles without stopping. Today I'm aiming for 2.5. Small steps forward, but they're my steps, and no one can take them away from me again.